Right, let's take a look at stage 19, a sort of cruel, disorienting alpine circuit that will mean the riders see the start town twice. It begins with a climb, skimming the top of Mont Vernier from yesterday's stage on the way up to the Col du Chaussy, before descending and taking a sightseeing trip along the Maurienne Valley. 12 kilometres up the east side through the intermediate sprint, and 12 kilometres back along the west. Yesterday's big climb of the Col de Glandon is just a way station today as the race heads higher still, up over 2,000 metres on the Col de la Croix de Fer. Once it's over the second category, Col de Mollard, the race finds itself back at Saint-Jean-de-Maurienne, where it turns and tackles the final climb up to 1,700 metres at La Toussuire. Nobody was waiting for the final climb, though, that was clear as soon as the first one started. Alberto Contador attacked barely 10 kilometres into the stage. Sky upped the pace to bring him back, but at the cost of using up riders. Then Vincenzo Nibali went, followed by Alejandro Valverde and Contador again. Suddenly, Chris Froome was down to Wout Poels and Geraint Thomas. And as Nibali, Valverde and Contador made it across to a large break containing Joaquim Rodriguez among others, Geraint Thomas was dropped too. Rodriguez led over the summit of the first climb to take a 10-point lead in the King of the Mountains competition. The Froome group pulled itself onto the back of the breakaway containing his three rivals just before they went over. On the descent, Geraint Thomas managed to rejoin his leader, and on the long valley road, Sky was largely reassembled and braced for more attacks. The sprint at 42 kilometres was a strange affair. Peter Sagan worked hard to get back to the main field before it, but then didn't bother sprinting as it rolled under the banner. We picked things up with 63 kilometres left to race on the climb of the Col de la Croix de Fer. Pierre, winner of the stage the last time the Tour came to La Toussuire, is out front on his own. The remains of the break, including teammates of Contador and Nibali, are behind him. And at 2 minutes 28 is the yellow jersey group with a Stanner at the front, pushing the pace to test an increasingly isolated Chris Froome.
Looking at Geraint Thomas here, and he's been dropped again on the climb. He's got Dan Martin just in front of him, and I'm not sure with the length of climb left he will return today. Porter's gone as well.
Now all of a sudden Alberto Contador, Phil, has two teammates in this group, but Wout Poels looks as if he's now in a spot of bother.
Well, he was yesterday, and he's last man standing for Sky right now, and now Chris Froome is going to have to handle himself here. Bauke Mollema just holding on the back, but I think Poels here is going to go up. Well, Joaquim Rodriguez is also in trouble now as the breakaway. He's gone right through the peloton here. Rodriguez, boy, he's blown big time. We are still 5 kilometres and a very steep finish to this climb, believe me. Pierre Rolland will be unaware of the drama behind, and he's getting on with the job to try and win the day.
Valverde's making a move.
There's the attack by Valverde, about 4 kilometres or so to go to the summit. And there's no reaction from Froome. He can't chase everybody. He's now more or less on his own. Wout Poels tries to take up the tempo, but I don't know how long Poels can keep doing this. And in fact, the others are waiting to let the pressure go. There's the attack, and that's a good move by Valverde. Sits third in the race.
Valverde can throw caution to the wind. You know, this is a guy who's got such an incredible pedigree behind his name. He's won all of the big races. He's won the Vuelta a España, but he's thinking, you know, today we've got Chris Froome on the back foot, and I can ride hard like this because my teammate in the white jersey there, Nairo Quintana, just can sit back and look, and if Froome shows any sign of weakness, Quintana can come across to me and we can set something up in the latter part of this race. Look at the gradient here, Phil. We're looking now at around about 11% gradient.
And immediately Valverde's gone across to Ruben Plata, and the only other man up front is Pierre Rolland, the leader, by 2:08 over yellow. He is now putting all of the pressure on Chris Froome, because if they catch Valverde, Quintana will go, the teammate of Valverde. Now this is the leader, let's not forget him. He's trying to win the day. He's the only man in front of all the action now, when there was 22 of them before. take your hat off to Wout Poels, who is slowly but surely grinding Chris Froome back up to those two, and we're only about 3 kilometres from the summit of the climb. That could be significant, especially now, because it looks as though they're cracking Michele Scarponi of Astana.
Yeah, Jose Herrada slipping away from this group as well, the Movistar rider, great climber in his own right. They've now been caught as Alejandro Valverde will sit on and try and recover for a little bit, because he realises while Wout Poels is riding into this headwind, he's wearing himself out.
2 minutes 6 the spread now. This man is leading, and the gradient now is 11%.
Well, he's inside of 3.5 kilometres to go to the top. That should take him probably less than 10 minutes to crest this mountain, the Col de la Croix de Fer. Oh, Chris Froome has got a little problem there. Now, all of a sudden, there was a little mechanical, and Chris Froome stopped at the side of the road, and Vincenzo Nibali has seen that, and he's launching an attack. Wout Poels immediately saw the problem there and stopped at the side of the road, but in fact, Chris Froome has decided he can't even wait for his teammate Wout Poels, and he's got to go very, very quickly.
Well, whatever happened to Chris Froome, it's a dim view and black mark for Vincenzo Nibali. You don't attack a rider. That's the gentleman's agreement when the rider is down through no fault of his own.
Valverde sees the gap behind them. It's Maika, and Vincenzo Nibali wants to get away over the top of this climb to try and ride free on the descent.
Well, it's left now to Chris Froome to pedal his way through. Riders do not attack other riders when they have mechanicals like that, and it's put the race leader on the defensive. The other boys are just trying to stop. Now, he's not too worried about the attack by Vincenzo Nibali because he's over 8 minutes behind. But he wants to control Valverde and, of course, Quintana and Contador. And Froome now has been put really on the defensive. Well, Nibali is pushing on here, and we're watching Froome try and get back. Jens Voigt, what do you think of that move by Nibali?
Well, I would probably need to look at another replay, but it definitely looked like Nibali attacked the second that Froome had a problem, that he went.
He looked straight at him and saw him stop. But there we are. That's up to Chris Froome now to put himself back in the race here. There's a spread to the leader of 1:54. Nibali has slipped away by 24 seconds at the moment, and he's going to get big points in the King of the Mountains as we race towards the summit. 1 kilometre to go for Pierre Rolland. He's got a lead of about 1 kilometre or so over the chase.
Well, in fact, from the bottom of the climb, you can now see that the wind has actually changed direction. It winds up this mountain pass up to the top of the Col de la Croix de Fer. At the beginning of the climb, the riders were picking up a very stiff headwind. And look at the flag there, Phil. You can see now that they're getting a block tailwind. Now, that will give the advantage to the real climbers. They like tailwind because it means they can push their speeds a lot higher on the slopes of a climb.
Well, Froome is now number 3. Quintana sits on his wheel. The one man who hasn't made a move, but he's watched the others hit out at Chris Froome, softening him up perhaps for a big attack on the last climb by Quintana. Valverde's done his job, sitting 3rd overall. But now this rider, for the first time in this tour, has really got himself free to fly. And he's got a chance of making up some of those 8 minutes and 4 seconds he has lost over 2.5 weeks to Chris Froome, last year's winner of the Tour de France. He was so dominant in the mountains, but Chris Froome and Contador weren't here.
No, they weren't. Pierre Rolland, once he gets to the top of this climb, he will be able to recover for quite a long descent.
Heading up to the summit, Pierre Rolland, the outside category. He gets himself 25 points in the King of the Mountains. That's not his aim today. He'll speed over the summit and head to the Col de Molard. The difference between the top of the Croix de Fer and the top of the Col de Molard is 12 miles. A little bit of down, a little bit of up. Big moment for the Frenchman. They've got the control of the Tour these last couple of days, at least as far as the daily stages go. He's over the top of the Col de la Croix de Fer. Now the descent to the bottom of the Col de Molard.
One of the reasons why Roman Kreuziger on the front here was in the breakaway early on today was so that he could slip back down the race during the course of this climb and be alongside Alberto Contador. 1:06 is the gap to Vincenzo Nibali. He's halfway across the gap now to Pierre Rolland.
Now he's a good descender. He'll chase Pierre Rolland. If he gets up to Pierre Rolland, the race will take on a very much a different face. This is Romain Bardet. He wants the King of the Mountains points. He gets third place. That's going to put him ahead of Joaquim Rodriguez up the mountain, because Rodriguez was here and dropped. Don't forget, he's been left by the field. The man that won yesterday is changing direction. 16 points puts him 6 points in the lead in the competition.
Yeah, that's what he's thinking about this afternoon. He was not too concerned about finishing 7th or 8th or 11th overall in the Tour de France. He wanted to win himself a stage victory.
Well
he said, I want the adrenaline buzz, and he's got 3rd place over the top, and 4th place over the top is Chris Froome, asserting a little bit of authority in the group now.
.36 kilometres to go. Nibali is closing in about 900 metres. The cars are being stopped now by the referees. It's going to be one chase the other towards the summit here. And Pierre Rolland is climbing up to the King of the Mountain points. He knows he's coming.
Further down the road, 2 minutes further down the road, is Chris Froome, and in fact they are getting a little bit of help this afternoon coming from Jose Herrada and Team Movistar, who now have got to defend the position of Valverde and Quintana. All of a sudden, look at this.
Soon Valverde and particularly Contador are going to worry about this man, because he's going to eat into their positions in the overall situation. Here we come towards the summit. More points for Pierre Rolland.
Look at the difference in the speed, though. The difference in the speed, Phil, is 2 or 3 kilometers an hour between the two riders. So very shortly, Vincenzo Nibali will join Pierre Rolland. But Vincenzo Nibali, although he knows he could be looking at a top 5 position in the overall standings tonight, I think he's much more inspired by the fact that he wants probably the excitement of winning a stage.
Well, he's over the top first on the Col du Mollard, just about, and he's going to see Nibali right up behind him over the top now. They've got to get together on the descent and go on to the final climb.
So we saw this remarkable timing by Vincenzo Nibali, catching Pierre Rolland more or less right on top. So they joined forces on the descent. Here we see another attack from Romain Bardet. He just wants to secure his mountains jersey. He is basically right now the leader on the road in that mountains jersey, and he's going to secure more points for himself, trying to take that jersey on his shoulders for tomorrow's stage.
Good spot there, Jensi. Romain Bardet really inspired by his performance of yesterday. He's consolidating his position in the King of the Mountains classification.
Now, if we're to stop the race right now, Quintana would be the same time as this morning, so too Valverde, but Vincenzo Nibali would be up from 7th place to 4th place and displaces Alberto Contador.
This is the quick chat between the two of them. Let's collaborate.
He's saying, let's go together. And it looks as though Pierre Rolland might be fancying his chances.
Well, isn't that funny, Phil? The 2nd and 3rd place French riders from the finish up to the summit in Monde a couple of days ago, going across the top of this mountain there, is in 3rd and 4th place on the road.
Well, what a great Tour de France, and what a great 3 days so far we've had in these Alps, and there's one more to come tomorrow.
Both of these riders are around about the same caliber, about the same level. You're looking at a man who's finished 4th overall in the Giro d'Italia, and a man who's won it 50 kilometers an hour. Oh, wow.
Well, he went offline again, taking the inside before he sees the bend, and he looked down below him. He should come in a much wider angle than that to get round those corners. This man, he went as soon as he came over the top, and this is the reason, because he is a very good descender.
Now you see how he got caught up by the same corner, Phil. I'm telling you, this corner is much sharper as the riders come out of it than they expect. They look at the lay of the land, they look at the trees, and it's caught a lot of riders out. And watch out for the main field when they come down there too. That's probably why the organisation had the straw bales there.
That's a good idea anyway. Bardet continuing to go down the hill here. He's the 3rd rider on the road at the moment. Now he's got a problem with his chain here. No, he's sorting it. Is he? No.
Yep.
He has a problem, and I think it's with the movement that puts the chain up and down that ring.
So if I saw it correctly on these images, I mean, it's all moving and shaky. It looks like Romain Bardet is forced to use the small chain ring in the front in order to avoid his front derailleur hitting his cranks. So he is on a 39.11 here. It's not the best gear, but it's all he can do for the moment, and he's trying to hang on to his little lead over the next group.
That's right, it's a bike change, and that's what he wants, is a bike change, and there's nothing more he can do about it except hope. He's on his way down, don't forget, before we start the steady climb of the ride up to the finish of La Toussuire.
20 kilometers to go for Vincenzo Nibali and Pierre Rolland.
Well, I'm not so sure they oh, now the bike change. The car has got to him, done good to get even to him now. Quick bike change, the peloton is there. He'll run back into the group. Well, at least he gets to lose nothing there, but he'll have to attack again.
Well, what he'll have to do first is recover a fraction. He's coming up to a very fast part of the course now. He's changed onto a new spare machine. There we go, 18 kilometers now to go to the summit of the final climb of today's stage. All of the toughness behind us. First climb of the day, Col de Chaussy, followed by the Col de la Croix de Fer, followed by the Col du Mollard, and now just one climb remaining. 18 kilometers to the summit of La Toussuire.
18 kilometers. It's a steep climb in places, particularly towards the end. I'll tell you what, Paul, this is the chance now for Nibali to gain time. So as we look here, and there's a bike change on course at the moment as well. And this looks like Alberto Contador has had a problem.
Well, that was a very, very quick bike change. It seems as if everybody's changing their bikes at the moment, because a few moments ago, Romain Bardet went through the same thing. Now, I wonder if this bike change here is to change to a lighter machine for the final climb of the day.
This is the yellow jersey bunch of Chris Froome. Is Quintana ill, or is he going to attack as well on this climb? As they start the climb now, the Battle of La Toussuire is about to commence.
And look how quickly Alberto Contador came back behind the referee's car. His teammate there, Roman Krujicka, has slowed back a fraction, not because he's being dropped, because he wants to pace Alberto Contador back into the group. Oh, Nibali's gone.
He's gone at 16 kilometers to go to the summit, and Nibali now has got legs to fly, and when this message gets back to the group chasing, they are going to have to do something about it, because Pierre Rolland looks to have hit the wall. This is the Battle of La Toussuire, and the man leading them up it right now is last year's winner of the Tour de France, Nibali. Vincenzo Nibali just leaving behind the town that says there's 6 miles to the summit of the stage today. The Groupe Maillot Jaune of Chris Froome at 2 minutes 18. They sort of get close and then they drift again. It's 9.4 kilometers from the summit now, and all of the time the lead is now going up again, and I think Pierre Rolland is only about half a minute ahead of that yellow jersey group now. They might well sweep him up soon. He is now passing under that 10-kilometer banner.
Yes, he is, and his deficit is very close to the 2-minute margin. I think if we were to look back, it wouldn't be very long, Phil, before we start to see the rest of the yellow jersey group. I think the clock was on time this time, Phil. They're just coming up to 5:30 in the afternoon, local time in France.
It's been a long ride already. They started just after 1 o'clock this afternoon, and we followed them every inch of the way. And now this is the peloton at 10 kilometers, so they're not very far away from picking up Pierre Rolland. Now it does plateau out a little bit, it eases, and then it kicks again to the finish.
Rolland, he made the move. He made the very long, brave move after getting into the early breakaway of 26 riders at one stage, but they never had more than a couple of minutes advantage over the main field. He realized that if he wanted to win the stage, he had to go for a long one, and made the move over the top of the Col de la Croix de Fer. Nibali wearing number 1 as the defending champion, and once we got to the start of this climb, well, Nibali decided he was off. He did lead to the Criterium de Dauphiné. That was the first indication that he was on track to ride well in the Tour de France. He led the race for a day. Then he went out on a mad, long breakaway and got caught down towards the end. But I think that was just trying out the motor before he came through to the Tour de France. He had a lot of bad luck in the early part of the race, where he lost some time. He had a badly timed mechanical and a badly timed crash as well, which put him a long way down in the standings. But he certainly has never given up. These are the guys we've been talking about on all of the mountain stages. Thibaut Pinot just in front of him. It was Bardet in front of him in the white jersey. Trek Factory Racing, Bauke Mollema, all riders in the top 10 in the overall standings, apart from Pinot, who lost a lot of time. He's more than half an hour behind in the standings, while they're now just about to make the junction. It was a good move by Europcar. but it hasn't paid on this occasion. The race situation now is down to one lone leader, Vincenzo Nibali, the champion of Italy.
Well, we're now back to a chasing group of 12 with the capture of Pierre Rolland, and the gap is at 2 minutes 22. At the moment, these are huge time gains by the Italian because we have one more day in the Alps tomorrow.
Yeah, and the question is, and you've asked it a couple of times, Phil, has anybody got the firepower left to reduce the gap to Vincenzo Nibali? He will be extremely happy with what he's doing. I don't think Chris Froome has to worry too much. It's up to everybody else, really, to defend their positions in the overall standings. Froome has done everything he needed to so far in the race, and he can ride defensively. It's up to everyone else to come to the front and do some pace-making. This man does not look like a man who is slowing down at all. He's got high cadence. Looking down there, he's pedaling at around about 95 revolutions to 100 revolutions a minute, and he's certainly the kind of rider who will not weaken as he gets up towards the top of this climb.
I think it's been a superb show of defiance by Vincenzo Nibali. He's doing it on a matter of pride because he wears #1 as last year's winner.
Rafael Majka has been given the nod by the team to pick up the pace, and look at this speed. We're going uphill, by the way, Phil, let's not forget, 25 kilometers an hour. That's almost 15 miles an hour we're going up these hills. I know it looks easy here, but I do know that when we drove the car up this climb last night, it certainly is not an easy drive in the car, let alone coming up on a bicycle after 4 hours in the saddle.
Well, we really kick up towards the finish shortly. This is a false flat, if you like. There's music to the ears. It's saying 2:25. We're saying 2:22. 3 seconds could be the difference between third tonight in the Tour de France if we continue at this rate. Wout Poels still protects his yellow jersey. What a hero he's been for Sky now, because the strong men of 2.5 weeks are no longer with Chris Froome. Dropped today. Away, Geraint Thomas has gone from 4th overall. Probably going to lose 10 or 12 minutes by the end of this day.
I think you're quite right, Phil. A lot of these guys are just happy to be here. They realise that they've got no more gas in the engine tank, and they're just really on survival mode. But we will see some attacks come as we get up towards the top of this climb, because they will look for any final opportunity on today's stage to grab a little bit of time on the run into tomorrow's stage. And let's not forget, tomorrow is another monstrous stage back over the Col de la Croix de Fer, down into the valley of Oison, and the famous finishing climb of the Alpe d'Huez.
And that's probably what they're thinking about right now, because with the gaps of minutes, they should have attacked by now. This man here we're looking at now, he won 4 stage wins in the Tour de France last year, and that just shows he has won nothing at all this year. Nibali, there was only a couple of days when he didn't wear yellow as well.
Well, let's not forget, though, Phil, that this man has concentrated, dedicated his whole season to prepare for the Tour de France. And he gets a lot of stick from the Italian press as an Italian for not riding the Giro d'Italia, which is their home Grand Tour. But he comes back and prepares for this.
Well, he's still climbing at about 11 miles an hour at the moment. And Vincenzo Nibali showing today he's not out of this Tour yet. Poels has gone.
His job done for the day. That means now all of a sudden Chris Froome is isolated once more.
Yes, but at this stage of the race, Froome has shown us he seems able to handle himself, but somebody's got to try and test him, surely, if they can. Here he goes. Contador, Gesic's the man to start it. Quintana looks across, sees Contador, sees his captain, Valverde is there. Froome is locked in, but this isn't an attack.
Well, Mike, I think it was just a little dummy attack by Robert Hessing there, and Mike just responding and whipping up the pace a little bit more. He's a very strong rider. Let's not forget the rider on the front is he's actually putting a daylight between himself and Robert Hessing, who tried to make a move there. Now there's a move around the outside for Quintana.
Well, this is what he said he would do. We didn't know whether he was sick or not. Quintana is now looking, he can only gain seconds, but the acceleration has to come from Froome, because Quintana is the one man he doesn't want to give any time to, because tomorrow on Alpe d'Huez, who knows what will happen. Froome has reacted.
This man is not sick. He's been sitting in the shadows all day, just waiting, biding his time patiently to hit Chris Froome at this point.
5 kilometers to go for the man who's alone in the lead. The gap has come down to 2:04. The man in white, who last time he rode the Tour de France, finished second to Froome. There's the attack.
Yeah, but watch out how Chris Froome has responded. Right onto his wheel is Alberto Contador. Contador sitting there behind Chris Froome, and Contador is Alejandro Valverde. The Frenchman, Romain Bardet, is trying to stay in contact, but the big guns now, the salvos, are beginning to fire.
Froome was very alert there. He had to dodge round the slowing Rafael Majka, got round him very quickly, and here's the result. He's going back up to Quintana with Contador and Valverde. Wow, the top four riders in the Tour de France are going head-to-head again.
Well, I had thought that Alejandro Valverde was not having one of his better days. He struggled yesterday. Now Bardet has been left behind. Robert Gesing has been left behind. Thibaut Pinot, Bauke Mollema. These guys, if you like, these are the second string. But again, there's another little kick coming from Nairo Quintana. This guy is a magical climber from Boyacá in Colombia. He's not even concerned, Phil, about altitude.
Well, it doesn't look to me as though those two are going to do much about it, because Froome has left them both behind. He's going after Quintana on his own. Contador has cracked, Valverde has cracked. Suddenly the race has become a battle of two men, and can he stop him gaining any time at all?
Well, bear in mind, put it into perspective, Quintana has been waiting for this climb. There's a long way still to go, Phil, on a mountain stage like this at 4.5 kilometers remaining. Quintana is 3 minutes and 10 seconds behind Chris Froome in the overall standings. Froome knows this climb. He knows, in fact, he finished third place on this climb way back in 2012 when he was a teammate of Bradley Wiggins. Bradley Wiggins went on to win that Tour. But now for Froome, it's a question of riding for himself, riding in defense of his overall lead.
He's only got to limit his losses. He doesn't have to get alongside Quintana, but it would be a nice psychological blow if Quintana did gain a few seconds. As the gap now continues, they're closing to 1 minute 50 on the man up front. Chris Froome has watched his team fall around him all day, and now he's got to do it himself. But hey, if you're the leader of the team, this is when you prove it.
Well, the time comes when you're the leader of the Tour de France, when you have to take a responsibility. The time gaps at the start of the day was 3 minutes and 10 seconds back to Nairo Quintana, 4:09 to Alejandro Valverde. Geraint Thomas, he's disappeared today. He was in fourth at the start of the day, and Alberto Contador was at 6 minutes and 40 seconds.
This rider is gaining time, remember, and he's still looking forward to a good finish here. It's only Quintana who's closing on him, and Quintana is already ahead of him, so he's not worried. And now where is Chris Froome? Chris Froome still revs his bike up and just hopes. He's going away at the moment. This rider, though, with 3.2 kilometers to go, you know, Quintana could reach him.
Well, he certainly could. He's really eating into that gap. Quintana, we've always said, Phil, is one of the greatest climbers on the international circuit these days. But what a day he's had. He's had to bide his time. He's had to wait patiently to make this violent effort.
This is Robert Gesing. He's lost his overall position tonight because of these attacks. And Gesing is trying to keep this pace up. The other two, clearly, Paul, have sold out. Well, he's got all the crowd to shout him on here. There may be the French flags, but this guy has a different coloured flag, and so does this man here. This is the first time that Quintana has managed an attack that has got rid of Chris Froome, and it's the day before the Tour ends its journey through the Alps. Froome is just trying to hold on. I don't think I can remember ever seeing Chris Froome out of the saddle this Tour.
I was going to say exactly the same thing. You very rarely see Froome get out of the saddle. There's a Colombian corner there. There's so many Colombian supporters have come down to the Tour de France to watch this. Look at the gap now, 1 minute and 10 seconds to Vincenzo Nibali. But despite the fact, Phil, that Chris Froome had got out of the saddle, he's gasping for breath here, but it's still only 16 seconds.
16 seconds, and he needs to save as much as he can. Who knows what will happen in the Alps tomorrow, because this has been that sort of bike race. This is an incredible ride as he accelerates there again, as he tries to find his rhythm again. A minute 27, the gap is now gone up to 18 seconds between the two. This is beginning to look. If he loses half a minute, Chris won't feel happy tonight.
Well, if he loses half a minute, he'll still be more than 2.5 minutes ahead of Nairo Quintana, but I think it will be the psychological blow and the fact that his team has crumbled all around him on this penultimate mountain stage. Again, for the first time maybe, Phil, we're starting to see a little bit of pain on the face of Nairo Quintana. It's now 20 seconds the difference between Quintana and Chris Froome.
Oh, it's like squeezing out an already dry sponge here at the moment as Valverde heads up the chase behind. They are all losing time too to Nibali, don't forget. This gap now, it's 1:25, the maillot jaune behind Nibali. These boys are losing time. Nibali knows they're coming. He wouldn't look over if he didn't. It's 1:01 to Quintana. We're heading into the last 1.5 kilometres.
Phil, remember what Chris Froome said to us this morning. It's not about trying to win the stage because there's another day to come up to the summit of Alpe d'Huez. He knows he's on the defensive, but we're looking here at 22 seconds. In real respect, it's not all of that much of a panic for Chris Froome as he goes under 2 kilometres to go. He just needs to limit his losses in a moment like this.
21 seconds now. This is a day the robot became human. It's all about hurting yourself now to win the Tour de France, not counting the power output and how many watts you're sending down the line. It's 1:03 to Quintana, 1:24 to Froome. I can't remember a Tour de France for years like this.
No, this is phenomenal. When you think about this guy, he was counted out after a week of the racer when he was so far down. Everyone said, well, he can't win the Tour de France anymore. But right now with pride, yes, Phil, you're right. He's thrown his wattage away. He's thrown his heart rate monitor away. He's riding on his gut. He's riding with his heart here this afternoon.
Well, the shark of Messina hasn't found too much food in the waters over this first 2.5 weeks of the Tour de France, but he wanted to salvage some pride and something for his Astana team. He's under the kilometre to go. Chasing him under the kilometre to go is Nairo Quintana, and not much longer, but maybe half a minute. Here comes Chris Froome. Quintana's around that far corner. The gap is there. This is the first time we've seen a reversal to the maillot jaune and a revival of last year's maillot jaune who won the Tour de France. It's been a wonderful day for Vincenzo Nibali today.
It certainly has, Phil. He rocks his shoulders now, but as he sees 400 metres to go, he knows that finally this one is in the bag.
And then the clock will start here to see exactly where he sits tonight, but he started the day in 7th place, 8 minutes 4 seconds behind Chris Froome. He's got his chain with his little crosser right across his mouth there as he comes up. This is going to be so special as he swings up towards the finish in La Toussuire. He does the right and the left. He can see the line now. The crowd are pummeling the boards here. This is the moment. I'm back. It's a win for me, for Italy, for Astana. And then the clock starts now to see where he sits tonight in the overall. And this man finally, after 2.5 weeks of trying, has rid himself of Chris Froome. But has he rid himself with enough time?
Well, you know, when you've got this man's ability, you've just got to keep that cards close to your chest until the right moment to put them on the table. He's put them all on the table here this afternoon. But the question is, you're right, Phil, what is the gap going to be? He was looking to try and bridge 3 minutes and 10 seconds. That's an awful lot to bridge on the slopes of a mountain in the modern era of cycling, but he's done what he knew he had to do this afternoon, and as soon as he starts to cross the line, we'll have to start the clock to see what are his time gains over the man who leads this race today.
He hits the line 44 seconds after Vincenzo Nibali. The clock is now running on the loss of the maillot jaune. He's had a real good last couple of kilometres. He's fought his way back. He hasn't lost that much, but he has lost time. Well, he's made a very interesting day tomorrow on the last day in the Alps for the Tour de France. This has been a super tour, and it's not over yet. About 29, 30 seconds.
Valverde will sprint for pride here if he can as they throw themselves into the chicane. Romain Bardet is on the wheel of Alejandro Valverde. Bauke Mollema just behind him, and Alberto Contador just a little bit adrift, but in the group as they come up. Thibaut Pinot looks across. 4th for him, 5th for Bardet.
And behind Bardet came Valverde, Mollema, Hezing and Contador. They were 2 minutes 26 behind Vincenzo Nibali, Nairo Quintana 44 seconds behind him, and Chris Froome 1 minute 14, 30 seconds behind Quintana. Since his bad first day in the Pyrenees, it's been looking as though Vincenzo Nibali had nothing to ride for in this race but his own pride. As things stand, he goes into the last day in the Alps with the possibility of a place on the podium. Romain Bardet goes into the last Alpine stage as leader in the King of the Mountains, although only by 3 points from Chris Froome, who's still on for the double. No longer looking at a podium finish, sadly, is Geraint Thomas. He finished 53rd in a group 22 minutes behind the leader. There were 2/3 of the field behind them. Not that that was any consolation to Geraint.
Just empty today. It was always going to happen, I guess. I was hoping it was going to come Monday, but came today and just like, yeah, I just did not have anything. And as they say, sometimes you're the hammer, sometimes you're the nail, and I was a cheapy little IKEA nail today. It was terrible.
And for only the 3rd time this tour, there's no Geraint Thomas in the top 10. Chris Froome's lead is down from 3 minutes 10 over Nairo Quintana to 2 minutes 38. Alejandro Valverde stays 3rd but slips to 5 minutes 25, 1:19 ahead of Vincenzo Nibali, who's up to 4th. Alberto Contador stays 5th at 7 minutes 56. Robert Hesink is 6th, Matthias Frank 7th, Bauke Mollema 8th, Romain Bardet 9th, and the new name in the top 10 is Pierre Rolland. Geraint Thomas is now 15th at 27.24. He still shares in the collective victory that will be Chris Froome's, of course, if he can defend 2 minutes 38 on Alpe d'Huez tomorrow. There's not much Froome can do, though, to defend himself against roadside abuse, and today's range from obscene gestures to spitting. Froome says he didn't notice any of that. Perhaps he was too focused as he rode the final climb on the memory of Vincenzo Nibali's attack at the very moment that he had mechanical trouble on the Col de la Croix de Fer.
I just suddenly felt as if my back wheel locked up, and a bit of tar or a small stone had locked itself between my brake calipers and my back wheel. So I had to stop, take the wheel backwards just to get the stone out. Unfortunately, I mean, that was the moment that Nibali decided to make his move. He did see what he was doing, and
I was just going to say he's actually said that he didn't see, but that's not quite how you read it.
I'm pretty sure he looked around, saw I was in trouble, and attacked. And in my opinion, you don't do that to the race leader. It's not sportsmanlike.
Io non l'ho visto, la sua parola contro la mia, quindi nient'altro. Io ho parlato con Kangert e come ho già detto abbiamo fatto il nostro ritmo molto alto, nient'altro.
Listen, the die is cast now. You know what to expect tomorrow. They're going to try and isolate you again, and it's one big mountain. It's going to be full on tomorrow, isn't it?
It's going to be very full on. I mean, Alpe d'Huez, I'm actually quite looking forward to it. The most iconic stage of this year's tour. It's going to be epic out there.